Hello and welcome to the Breaking Muscle podcast, the show that brings you the top minds in the fitness industry who share their knowledge and experience to help motivate and inspire you to take your training to the next level. I'm your host, Tom McCormick, and today I'm joined by Brad Borland. Starting out as a scrawny 125-pound kid, Brad took up weight training at the tender age of 14 and ended up a 220-pound, competitive, drug-free, natural bodybuilder. Now, armed with both knowledge and muscle, he has helped countless individuals all over the world. Brad is also a university lecturer with a master's degree in Kinesiology and a certified strength and conditioning specialist with the National Strength and Conditioning Association. We discuss a wide range of subjects, including why people use genetics as an excuse, realistic rates of gain for the natural lifter, how to filter the information overload the modern lifter is bombarded with, and Brad's favourite way to train if you want to build muscle as quickly as possible. So, without further delay, it's on with the podcast.
Brad, thanks so much for taking the time to sit down and have a chat today. Really excited to talk to you about everything training and nutrition for helping people build muscle and gain strength. But before we do that, can you give us a little background into how you got into the gym, what your journey into fitness was?
I don't know how in depth you want me to get, but I started training, as a kid at 14 years old in my parents' backyard, basically, and with a barbell, iron barbell, some iron weights, and a picnic table bench. And I did everything I could with that, and I started. You progress from there like everybody else does. You get a weight bench, and you keep progressing. And I started making some things. I put hooks on some trees to do chin-ups, and this is I'm going to age myself, but this is before the internet, and so everything was from either a magazine or a book or something like that, and so I kept progressing. And around 16 years old, the only reason I got a job was to pay for a gym membership. I didn't want to make any more money than that, actually, because it would take away from training time. And between school and training and a little part-time job, I think I was good. And so I'd ride my bike. I sound old again when I say this, but about 5 miles to the gym and train. And I trained and trained and trained. I probably overtrained. I'm pretty much guaranteed that I overtrained. But I was getting into the gym between 2.5 and 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I was really into bodybuilding was huge at the time. That was really the only thing that was around, popular wise, and progressed from there through high school and all these things. And I've always stayed natural, always stayed drug free, and mainly because I was scared to death of my father. He put the fear in me about everything. But I went into college, majored in kinesiology, got my master's in kinesiology from the same university, and then I started competing in drug-free bodybuilding shows, competitions. Did that for till about maybe 9 or 10 years. I think I did around 13 or 14 shows total. Progressed up, like everybody else. I kind of have my unofficial title is I'm the best mediocre bodybuilder that ever was. But it was a great time, and it was really full of camaraderie. I always recruited other people into the drug-free lifestyle as much as I could. And it was almost like this weird subconscious mission I was on. I don't know if I meant to do that or not, but so then I started really like, okay, well, I need to when I started writing, I kind of thought, I was like, okay, well, I can brand myself really as like the natural guy, the natural drug-free bodybuilder. And at the time, drug-free bodybuilding was a lot more popular than it is now. It's at least around, I feel like it's kind of gone on the wayside a little bit, but I used to recruit a lot of my friends. We used to just get together, and we traveled literally around the country competing and just had a good time, and no expectations. We didn't have delusions of millions of dollars in contracts and sponsors and stuff like that. And we just, we were big fans of the golden era of bodybuilding in the 60s and 70s, and we wanted to kind of have our own little golden era, if that makes sense. And you know, and we did it, and it was a great time, a lot of good memories and stuff. But yeah, and then I started writing, and you know, through writing, I think, you know, I've written through bodybuilding.com, Muscle and Strength, Tiger Fitness, Breaking Muscle, of course. It's interesting with writing and being in the industry, and on that end of the industry, sort of behind the curtain. You really get to see trends. You really get to feel the heartbeat of the pulse of where the pendulum's swinging. And I think right now there's about 10 pendulums out there. So, and it's funny because it felt like, to me, you know, I trained. I think the first time I worked out was probably 89 maybe, and it was pretty much one or two things. You were either a bodybuilder or like a powerlifter. That was it. But now for some reason it just feels like overnight you have a bunch of YouTube stars and all these different variations of training, and they just kind of, it feels, to me at least, it feels like it happened overnight. Like it just kind of shifted. All of a sudden now we have weightlifters, Olympic lifters, CrossFitters, bodybuilders, powerlifters, obstacle course racers, and then we have all the people that hate all the people I just mentioned. You know? And you know, so it's. But in a nutshell, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's probably some weird stories in between all that. But,
we'll try and investigate those and get those, you know, at front and center soon enough. So I think it's interesting because, I mean, obviously you've developed a great physique and you've competed at a high level in natural bodybuilding, but you didn't necessarily start out as someone as a naturally muscular guy that genetically gifted as such. Would you say that you were pretty skinny growing up and you had to work hard to develop your physique?
Yeah, you know, it was kind of weird. I kind of say I had good and bad genetics. I started out around 6 foot. I was probably 6'1". I'm 6'2" now, but probably 6 or 6'1" at the time. I was a freshman in high school and I was about 125 pounds. I say, you know, bad genetics, right? Skinny kid. I never was really a strong guy. I never developed into a really, really strong person. You know, I didn't have any impressive lips, I should say, but I worked my tail off. And again, I think I think I had good genetics in the form of I was skinny, and I didn't have a ton of weight to lose. Like, you know, back when I was starting out, we didn't have a lot of obesity. Like, kids weren't overweight, so we had a bunch of skinny kids. And so as I got older, I never got overweight. I was always on the thinner side. So later on, it was more of an advantage than a hindrance. Of course, as a kid, you want to be as heavy as possible, big as possible, strong as possible. But I look, again, this is before the internet, so, you know, I didn't have a lot of knowledge to draw on, which, again, I do think that's an advantage. I think when you have less choices, you tend to focus on the few choices that you make and you run with it. Because you get analysis paralysis. You know, you start to, you know, today I think there's just too much. There's just, I sound like an old codger, but it's just too much, and kids get confused. You know, they'll start a program today, I see it all the time, and then tomorrow they're going to start another one, and the next day they're going to, oh, I saw this on YouTube, I'm going to start this now. And the same with diets, but I just, you know, I mentioned earlier about training, you know, 6 days a week between 2.5, 3 hours a day, and people, oh, it's too much. I'm sure if they knew my email address, I'd get a lot of hate mail for that, but I just love training. To me, I wasn't overtraining, and I'm glad. If I went back and did it over again, I wouldn't change a thing. And the reason being because I learned so much through doing all that training. You know, the first time I stepped into a gym, I hooked right into the 30 and 40-year-old guys and that were training. That, to me, they were lifting tons of weight. They were strong. I looked up to them, and you know, they set me straight. You know, like, hey, you're overtraining, back off. You know. So I think it was a good learning experience. I think that, you know, learning it on your own, I think there's a huge advantage to it because I was so in tune what worked for me and what didn't. Just always following some other program or somebody else's program, and always following externally instead of looking internally. Like, okay, I'm being your own scientist, in other words.
Yes.
You're an experiment, and we as fitness professionals, as fitness coaches and things, we keep telling people that. We keep telling people like, oh, you got to find what works for you, but very few people are actually doing that.
Yes.
We have a very service-oriented world right now where we just want things to be done for us. So we don't want to learn, as individuals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't regret one bit. Being a skinny kid and training my butt off, and yeah, would I've gained 5 more pounds this year or that year? Sure, but I wouldn't have learned half as much.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so progress across the course of your career will be better because you've learnt those lessons, and it's not just because you've been following someone else's script and you've lucked out.
Yeah, and I think another weird kind of advantage is, this is a personal thing. I think this is a little bit more subjective in nature, but I have stories to tell. I like to have this ammo bag of stories where, like, I was training, legs for 3 hours straight, or I fainted in the gym, or I threw up on a back workout and all these things, and like people, they gasp, I'm not going to do that. But I guess my ego side is like, I like to have kind of stories like that to tell. But I know what it's like to train and to push when you're tired, when you're just beat down, and your workout should have ended 30 minutes ago. And I like to push. Yeah. Just it's a mental thing to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which a few badges of honor like you've earned over the years with those sort of things. So there's actually a couple of interesting points. I agree. Like, the grass is always greener. So as someone who was also naturally skinny, I always thought, it'd be amazing to be one of those guys, just looks at a weight and grows. But then, by the same token, they're thinking, you guys can be, you're lean all year. It's no effort for you. I wish I could do that. So there's advantage to both sides of the equation. I think the key is to accept where you are and then make the best of that situation. Rather than always, wishing for something else. And then your point about kind of like the information overload that we are living in with the internet, I think is also very significant. And the problem is that we don't have the filters, because of course, if you could just get access to the best information, that would be brilliant. But unfortunately, you're not born with the filter to know what's nonsense and what's useful. And there's so many conflicting opinions, or what appear to be conflicting opinions, because I think quite often people have the same sort of underlying principles. How they happen to have explained that, or the protocol they use to put that into practice, is slightly different. And then someone who's not aware of the background principles thinks they're completely different, but actually they're just a slightly different way of achieving the same thing. And it's really, really hard to do that unless you've spent, like you say, years and years training, learning the stuff, and then researching as you progress, to be able to sort of define or between those slightly different sources that actually are basically singing from the same hymn sheet, but someone else will tell you they're completely at odds with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that I just thought, like, you said, doing things yourself and just keeping an eye on your progress, what works and what doesn't, being your own guinea pig, so to speak. And it's what's interesting is, after years and years, literally decades, I can't believe I can say that. After decades of training, it's like, all the underlying principles, all the basic stuff is true. Nothing's changed. I mean, I know people are going to argue over supplements and training techniques and, cool sounding programs. There's some kind of weird acronym hooked into something to make it sound cool. But nothing's really all that different. If you look at like research by Brad Schoenfeld, for example, big hypertrophy researcher guy, he focuses on hypertrophy. A lot of the stuff he's finding out has been true for a long time. Mm-hmm. and his research is great. I mean, that's not a bash at Brad. It's I think it's wonderful what he does, and I love reading his work and stuff. But he's just kind of proving what the bodybuilders, for example, have been doing since the 50s, like 40s or 50s. So, but especially these young trainers today, they just want to and a lot of it's marketing. You put some bells and whistles and some bright colors on an old idea, all of a sudden you're going to sell more. You're going to sell more product or service out of it. So, I get it. It's a market. I mean, it's the fitness business. You know, it's called the fitness business for a reason, and or industry. So you know, but it can be a bit of a slippery slope for these sort of naive kids trying to get in and get in the ground floor and trying to do it right from day one. I say do it right, but not really do it right, but really rely on themselves to do their own sort of experiments and see what works. And it's good. Kids should they should fail. They should do things that don't work. They should feel that. They need to know what that's like, instead of picking that perfect routine. This is going to work for everybody right here, you know. And I don't know. It's a utopian mindset idea of mine, but you know, it's the way the world is. It's not going to work that way.
Yeah, and I think most people learn by doing, right? So it's, I can't remember the phrase, but if you tell me how to do something, you show me how, or you get me to do it, you're way more likely to understand. And that works on a small level of learning something in school, but also on that bigger level of if you're in the gym and doing it yourself, rather than being a keyboard warrior and just spending hours trawling the internet for the ultimate workout.
Right.
You know, what's going to get you better results? Being in the gym, working hard and experimenting, or spending the same amount of time surfing the internet? Well, it's pretty obvious. You're better off executing an imperfect plan really well and putting hard effort in than than desperately trying to search for this magical program that doesn't exist.
I'd much rather step up to the plate and fail and strike out every time versus just sit on the bleachers and criticize everybody else.
Yeah. Well, it seems to be now there's a fear of failure, but actually, it's actually, what's the phrase? It's first attempt in learning is fail. Yeah. So you need to go through that process. And actually, talk about the bells and whistles people put on their stuff. Now, one of the things that really drew me to your articles originally was that the content was great, but you weren't trying to fluff it or jazz it up or BS. It was just, here's some information, well presented, but neatly packaged up, and this is the stuff that counts, and this is what works. And what I really want to discuss today actually is some of those fundamental principles, and get people to realise that's where they need to be investing their time and effort, and there, rather than looking for these little tiny protocols that may or may not have any marginal gain outside that. But we talked briefly about genetics and being naturally skinny. Just want to talk about the impact of genetics upon hypertrophy, your ability to build muscle, and how, if at all, that changes how you approach training. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, as with everything, when it comes to strength, hypertrophy, if somebody's more powerful, they have a ton of endurance, as it relates to genetics. It varies. It varies. It varies so greatly with people, but at the same time, I almost use the G word like as a dirty word, because people, they take that word genetics and then they use it as an excuse. They just say, well, I'm not genetically supposed to have big calves or whatever. I don't know, whatever the goal is, I pick calves because everybody has, they want big calves. But
the struggle is real when it comes to calves. I can vouch for that.
Yeah, me too. But to me, it's like, well, why don't you do what you can with what you have? Everybody, I don't care what, can improve their calf size or their bench press strength or their chin ups reps or any goal. They can improve. Now, they always have this delusion of like, oh, I want to be the best. I want to have a 600-pound bench press or 23-inch calves or something. Like, well, no, but you can improve what you have. And so, I know there's a genetic limitation with a lot of people, especially skinny guys. I'm actually, when it comes to, I call it skinny guy training or whatever, hard gainer. That was a big buzzword in the 90s. Stuart McRobert books were big, and Mike Menzer training came back in vogue with Dorian Yates on the circuit and heavy duty training and things. But I kind of take the reverse approach, because when it comes to genetics, I was a skinny kid, And okay, so if I gain 5 pounds of muscle as a skinny kid, it's very noticeable on a skinny frame. 5 pounds is extremely noticeable. Number two, I had a very high metabolism. Well, guess what? That means I can have a pretty good protein turnover. I can ingest a good amount of protein. I can repair a lot faster than most people because I have a fast metabolism. So I can train more frequently. The consensus with hard gainers and quote unquote hard gainers has always been train infrequently, get plenty of rest, sleep, take naps, overeat, no extracurricular activity. You know, you're gonna burn up the muscle too much and all this stuff. I was like, wait a minute, you know, if I have a high metabolism and I'm lean, shouldn't I just be training my tail off and eating a ton of food? You know?
Oh, that's too simple. It can't be that easy.
Right. But I just took it. I look at it as an advantage. I was like, wait a minute. I can. My protein synthesis is probably a little bit better than the slow metabolism guy who can bench press once a week or once every 2 weeks and still get strong and all that stuff. I'm going to train everything 3 times a week because I'm repairing quicker. And I only need about 48 hours of reps, and which I did as a kid. I was training everything 3 times a week and. Doing tons of reps and sets and stuff like that, and because I wanted muscle, I wasn't really interested in getting super strong or anything. I wanted to build muscle, and there's a big difference. But as far as genetics, I hate to give you like a cop out answer, but I think people like, okay, accept it. These are my genetics, but then what can we do about it? You know.
Yeah, there's really no point focusing on it because it's determined well before you're even able to consider it as a fact. I mean, you know, your genetics are your genetics. You can't change them. I think it's almost, to some extent, there's a bit of a paradox. You need to accept your genetics and be like, so say you are that kind of hard gainer, realize that, but then just park that and move on to, well, now I need to optimize everything to get the best result, rather than using it as kind of a death sentence to, you know, like, I'll never build any muscle.
Right. I think people, they shoot themselves in their foot because they just say, well, I'm not going to be, I have bad genetics, I'm not going to build any muscle. And then that they almost feel comfortable when they say it. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, the pressure's off. Now I don't need to go to the gym and work so hard. Now I don't need to have these certain expectations and different things. And so, and that's the cynical side of me. But I do. I think people they get comfortable in that excuse.
Yeah.
Like, well, they throw their hands up like, well, see, there you go, bad genetics.
Yeah, I think an excuse is what it is for a lot of people. You're right, and it makes them feel better about not achieving. But then if they've never put the work in, they can't complain about what they haven't achieved. So.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of bodybuilding gurus will know, Frank Zane, I mean, he was 3-time Mr. Olympia in the late 70s. I mean, he was a thinner Mr. Olympia. He was a skinnier guy, and he got 3 titles out of it. I mean, you can't deny that.
Yes. The other thing I can sometimes try and explain to people is that, like, genetics or being skinny doesn't determine your trainability, as in just because you start out skinny doesn't mean that when you start lifting, you won't actually see great results. And being skinny doesn't necessarily mean that you're, it's not a particularly scientific term, but when we use that hard gainer, just naturally skinny, you can actually be, you might find that you respond great, you start lifting and actually you blow up. So I think people, I get questions and they're like, they're 15-year-olds going, oh, I'm like, I'm never going to build muscle. I'm like, well, you're 15. Have you tried? So I think, people self-limiting beliefs or whatever are a big issue. So I think, I 100% agree with what you're saying there. And so now we talked about muscle. You've mentioned Brad Schoenfeld, and so let's quickly dive into what causes muscles to grow. So what do you actually need to do to get that adaptation of the bigger muscles that we're all craving?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows, some of the three factors. You have, metabolic stress, of course, and there's a lot more research going in that direction right now, especially with at least some of the stuff I've seen Brad Schoenfeld do. But you have muscle tension and then mechanical damage, and those 3 things are really what makes the muscle grow. What does that mean to the layman? Time under tension, and working to failure, different things like that. But I kind of even step back even a little bit further in the big picture of things, and I kind of tell people, I say, look, you go to any gym, And this is what I tell my students too, because with my classes, we have one class that I teach at the university, strength programming and conditioning for strength coaches. And we do all 4 variables of resistance training. We do power, strength, hypertrophy, and muscular endurance. And they're all different. They're all performed differently. And I try to tell them that. I said, you go to any gym, and you'll see people, if you get in their head, they want to be muscular and bigger, big man in campus, right? They want muscle. But what they're performing is actually pure strength training, because they're resting 5 minutes between sets. They're loading the bar down with 2, 3, 4 rep sets. They're worried about strength. They think that's going to get them bigger. Will it get them bigger? Yeah, there's carryover in all of these variables. You know, somebody working with is somebody that's going to do muscular endurance type training. They're going to get a little bit more, stronger, a little bigger. Yeah, not optimal, but they will have some carryover into that. But but I tell them about hypertrophy. It's like a kid would come up, hey, how do I get bigger this or bigger that? And I was like, well, rest about 60 seconds between sets. Make sure your rep range is an 8 to 12, 8 to 15 reps. Doing a lot of reps, a lot of sets, a lot of volume. And it's usually a culture shock, because they're used to resting, taking a few selfies in the mirror.
Texting their mate.
Right, all this stuff. So that's always, over the years, I've tried heavy duty training. I've tried rest pause. I've tried all these different things. And I'm glad I did. But I always revert back to moderate weights, moderate reps, high volume, get in the gym most days of the week, work your tail off, very little rest between sets. Mm-hmm. And I always gravitate back to that, no matter what I'm experimenting with. Because the heavy duty stuff, it gets a little, because it's focused on strength, right? So joints start hurting. You start trying to beat the number, and that's not good, because hypertrophy's got a lot more to do with fatigue of the muscle, recruiting more muscle fiber in the area, versus pure strength, like just trying to get a number up, reps or weight or both. So again, a lot of carryover. Stronger guys they're gonna grow muscle, sure, but not optimally.
Yes.
Hypertrophy guys are gonna get stronger, not optimally. But I think you have to pick and choose whatever your goal is, really.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people nowadays want to be more well-rounded and all that stuff, but I don't know. I've had healthy joints from doing moderate weights over the years versus any kind of powerlifting or weightlifting.
Absolutely. I think the key thing is, as you say, it's people not training specific to their goals. It's specificity, specific adaptations to impose demand, that whole principle. And I know that, it was a mistake I made. I was chasing numbers, and I was doing 1 to 5 reps and thinking I was training to get bigger. Sure, I probably built some, but as you say, nowhere near as much as I could have. It was nowhere near as efficient if my programming had been specific to what my outcome was, and matching my actions to my goals. I think that's something that lots of people aren't doing, perhaps just because they don't know in a lot of cases, and then sometimes because ego takes over, and it's more impressive to lift a heavy weight, but actually what they really want is, what would be more impressive is to come back 3 months later and be noticeably bigger, but they kind of give up at that.
Yeah, the gym is it's an interesting place, and I say the gym. I just mean every gym in the world. It's an interesting place because your ego is at risk, no matter how old you are, all this stuff, and you see the old guys come up. Oh, back in my day, I did twice as much as that, and they have these old war stories and stuff, and the kid, he doesn't want to be embarrassed and all these things, and so. I think that's a huge, significant hindrance to newbies coming in the gym, and it really does stagnate their progress a lot, is that mentality. If they could just get past it, hang their ego up at the door, get in there, get in the gym, do what you need to do, not what you think you need to do, but what you need to do, and then it'll work it out itself. But they get that ego, and I was no different. We've all been there. Young kid, 15, 16 years old or whatever, lifting a weight around a bunch of guys twice his age, they're lifting twice as much weight, and it affects you. We're all human beings, but I just wish people would just be a little more tempered. I just see so many guys, especially guys. There's just a flash in the pan. I mean, they're just, because everybody today works out. There's a huge difference between today and 30 years ago. 30 years ago, you had a few people worked out. People jogged, they'd exercise or this or that. Now everybody's in the gym.
Yeah.
Everybody's in the gym now. Doctors, lawyers, housewives, kids, old people, everybody's in the gym. So it's an interesting, I say it's an interesting, most interesting place in the world, I think, because you get, it's like a slice of, it's a perfect slice of all kinds of demographics.
Yeah, you get that cross section of the demographic, don't you? Yeah, it's very, very true. And the other thing I think is people hear that progressive overload is important, but the problem is they think that just means A to B. And so, as you say, they're chasing weight on the bar. It moves from one point to another, but they're not challenging their muscle anymore. By doing that, and that's essentially what you need to do, is be challenging the muscle. So I think that's a key thing for people to understand, and also to understand that progressive overload doesn't just mean weight. It can mean doing more volume for a body part. That is an overload. It's just a different metric of that overload, as it were. Very, very true in terms of being specific to your goal.
And I'm a bit biased, of course. I started out bodybuilding, and that's what I've been doing, and that's all I've been doing. And but I always say, if you're going to build your body, no matter what, if it's for a competition or you just want to reshape your body, there's no other type of training, in my opinion. There's no other type of training that's more effective than hypertrophy style training to reshape your body into something. Cardio, you're going to lose weight, but you're going to lose muscle if that's all you do. Strength training, you're not really going to reshape your body. You're going to get stronger. It might shape up a little bit. But with that said, I always tell people, when it comes to ego too, is to say, look, enter the gym. Don't go to the gym to lift weights. Go to the gym to work your muscles. So if you have that reverse mentality, it's like, okay, like you said, A to B. I say, okay, don't lift this bench press from A to B. Lift it from A to Z, because there's a whole alphabet in between there. We have to flex the muscle, stretch it, pump it up, all these kinds of things. Don't throw the weight up and all these things. Feel every inch of that rep. And so I try to get them mentally prepared, like we're working our muscles, we're not lifting weights.
Yes. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Actually, I recently interviewed a guy based over in London, and he was talking about how people are really focused on movements, and he's more focused on muscles. Because that's what you're actually training, and then if you train those and they get stronger because you've you've challenged them, then your movements can improve. But as opposed to just always focusing about the movement. So same concept as you're alluding to there. And then so we've talked about this, and if you do things right, you can build muscle. That's even if you're telling yourself, I'm a skinny kid, I can't. It's 100% possible to build a considerable amount of muscle. But what I want to do is give people, maybe manage their expectations so that they don't think they're going to look like Arnie in 3 weeks' time. What's a realistic sort of rates of gains in your experience for a natural lifter across the course of their career?
Well, I think your average teenager, if they start out and they're skinny, like me. I gained around 25 pounds my first year. But I was pretty obsessive. So, and that's before I really discovered dieting. Like eating healthy. I did like one step at a time. 1 year I focused on training. The next year, I need to eat to support my training. Okay, let me look at that. The next year was like, okay, I need to little things like I need to reduce my fat or reduce salt intake and things like that. So I didn't do everything all at once. Definitely not. But I think, the average skinny teenager could expect at least 20 pounds in the first year. I mean, like I said, even 5 pounds is incredibly noticeable on a skinny frame. So, but with what you said earlier, though, expectations and everything, that skinny kid's like, I don't have the genetics to gain muscle. I might as well not even try. But a lot of people, their expectations are too high, but if they just went in and did something for 6 months to a year, let's say they gained 10 pounds of muscle, right, for example, they might be like, I'm happy. I don't want to gain the 50 pounds of muscle and be like Mr. Olympia. I'm happy with these 10 and maybe 5 more in the next couple of years, But their filter changes a
Yes.
little bit. Their vision changes, and they say, well, I'm glad I did that. You know?
Yeah.
Instead of quit and say, well, I can't be Mr. Olympia next week, so I'm not going to even try.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think to some extent social media maybe feeds into that, because you have images of guys that are just obviously incredible physiques using all kinds of drugs to achieve that, and they're like, oh, well, how come I don't look like this guy? I've been training for a month, I don't look like this guy, and they get disheartened and they just think it's unattainable. Well, the reality is that unless they're going to inject themselves with all sorts of stuff, it is unattainable. But yeah, I think that really can put a downer on people as well. Somehow they just warp their expectation. Their body image is all over the place because what is possible is distorted.
Yeah, social media is, I'm sure that's a whole other interview, but that's something I'm pretty, I can get on my soapbox about that, but that's something that's incredibly overwhelmingly significant with all these mental attitudes and sort of the way things are going. You know, the mental health of kids and different things like that, as far as their expectations with their bodies, and especially bodybuilding, because that's visual, let's face it. But even with strength training and strongman and all these other, powerlifting, they're posting more and more of their lifts and all these things, and it distorts the mind. I think it's dangerous personally, and I think it's one of the more it's kind of looked over by a lot of people. They just, that's just Instagram, whatever, it's fun. Like, no, it's warping your expectations daily. Mm-hmm. And then that whatever distorted vision you have, now you're reinforcing it every single day.
Yes.
You're cementing it into your mind. And so that's what I tell people. They say, what's your Instagram, or what's this? It's like, I have stuff, but I tell them I'm no good at it, so I don't even post anything. So,
well, I mean, the other thing is, people mostly, their Instagram or their social media, or whatever it is, usually it's their highlight reel as well. So you're getting their best bits, not a fair reflection of what they were actually going through, what the struggles or whatever, and how long it's maybe taken them to get there. So it can be in many respects quite toxic. So we talked about that rate of gain, and 20 to 25 pounds is perfectly doable for a young kid in year one. Presumably, though, you can't just add 20 to 25 pounds every year, so that otherwise we'd all be like 400 pounds shredded. So how does that relationship change as you become more experienced as a lifter?
Yeah, I think that I think you reach a point to where you I don't want to say it's sort of a quasi homeostasis, like this amount of muscle you put on, this level of leanness, with body fat composition that you attain, and I think your body kind of sets into that. And like for me, for example, I got up to the heaviest I've ever been in the off season was about 233 pounds. Heaviest I've been on stage, the day of stage, was about 217 pounds. So when I stopped competing, I maintained about 215 to 220 pounds physique pretty easily, pretty lean, not super lean, but I think as they move, 25 pounds the first year, I say 20 pounds. Maybe the next year they get 10, maybe the next year 8, 7, 5, maybe. But they're going to reach a homeostasis point. But I think at the same time, along that journey, their perspectives and their expectations will shift naturally. They'll get older and more mature and more understanding. Lifestyle changes, of course, married, kids, priorities change, but and you can't discount those things. I mean, that's real. That stuff happens, and it does change our perspective on expectations and things. But I think you land, especially when it comes to building muscle tissue, you land into this like nice, comfortable, like, okay, this is my physique. And I can kind of go up a little bit, I can get down a little bit. And you maintain this, since I was a skinny kid growing up, so it's a little easier for me to kind of stay lean, cheat a little bit on the diet here and there, but I don't go overboard, of course. But my body's kind of at this set point right now. It just kind of maintains. It's pretty. I can go in the gym, train a little harder, maybe a little less hard or something during the year. You have your seasons,
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think overall that their expectations will change with their muscle, you know. So like you said, they're not going to be 400 pounds ripped.
Yeah. But again, not to discourage them. You actually can put on a lot of muscle. So if you were 233 pounds at your heaviest, as like 16-year-old, for example, can you remember how much you weighed when you were 16?
16, probably around 16, maybe like 160 to 170, somewhere. And my goal was 185. I thought 185 was going to be like the pinnacle.
Oh yeah. Those goalposts. No, sorry, can't speak. Goalposts do change though, right? Like you're like, if I just hit 180, 185 will be it.
Well, the 185 was like muscular and a good poolside beach body, right? But then I got the idea. I said, okay, I'm going to start competing in drug bodybuilding, and I was a taller guy, so my weight had to be higher because drug free is all about your weight related to your height. That's how they classify you in most organizations. So I wanted to be at the upper echelon of my weight class and height class and things like that. So I knew I was like, well, I need to be at least 230 in the off season, and then rip down to maybe 212, 215.
Yeah.
So
you're saying from being age 16 to being in stage condition, you're probably 45, 50 pounds heavier, from when you were 16. Which, if people are sitting there now, like stage condition is not walking round. That's you're another 15 pounds heavier, at least probably walking round. Oh, yeah. Therefore, they could look dramatically different. It'll take time and effort and hard work and everything and patience, but whilst the rate of gain will slow, there's still plenty on the table available if you're prepared to put the work in.
Oh yeah. Because like I said, when I hit 185 and I decided to compete, then my workouts changed a little, my diet changed. So there's okay, now I got to ramp it up even more.
It matters more all of a sudden. So.
Yeah, and it's a little easier as you get older too to gain a little bit of weight because your bones are growing, your body's still growing as a teenager. So some of that weight is your body just growing. You're just getting thicker and organs and all these other things going on in you. But so a lot because people say like, 50 pounds. They think of steroids or something. And it's like, no, this is years and years and years. Yeah. And it's consistent. I think the first, at least 10 years I was in the gym, 6 days a week, at least 2 hours.
Yeah, I think that's hugely significant, is not to think, if I train for a few months every year for 10 years, I'll get there. It's, no, you basically train all year, every year, for the best part of a decade. But then it's doable if you're doing things right.
Yeah, and then again, I think my advantage was that I mentally and emotionally loved it.
Yeah.
I loved going to the gym. Most people dread it. I absolutely.
Did you? You always loved it, or you learned to love it? You always loved it. So that's the difference to me. So at first, I used to hate the gym because I was I'd much prefer to go for a run. I was naturally better at that sort of stuff. I was skinny, and I felt like in a gym I was intimidated, and like you said, the ego took over because I was lifting nowhere near what the other guys were. So then I'd use terrible form to try and lift a little bit more, thinking that they would be watching and be impressed, but actually no one's paying you any attention. But then because in time, the great thing about the gym is you get out what you put in. And I started. What happened for me was I became addicted to seeing results and return on investment, and then I really loved it. So like a little different way of accessing the gym, sort of thing, and training, but the same outcome in the end. And I think that's important for people to realise that it's almost your desire to train is trainable.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I think that's. One of the things that I can't empathize with a lot of people is like they say, I hate training, or I hate this, or I hate that. I cannot empathize with that because I've never hated it. I've never, a lot of my students, for example, they're all into the energy drinks, the pre-workouts, all these things. And I tell them, I say, I've never taken a pre-workout in my life. I just don't. I have my coffee in the morning, and that's more of a ritual than anything else.
Yeah.
If coffee was illegal tomorrow, I wouldn't care. I don't need it. But I tell them, I said, I go to the gym. I can have an hour of sleep the night before, ate horribly that day, I could still go to the gym. Once my hand hits that bar, I get energized. That I love to train, and I think you hit it on the head when you're seeing results. It's like, I think it was Charles Gaines, the co-author of Pump and Iron, the book and the movie. He had said, bodybuilding it's one architect's design versus another architect's design, and I saw my body as like I was building it.
Mm-hmm.
I was building this project, and that's not. Honestly, it doesn't come up from a place of being vain or egotistical or anything, but it was just like, I love the idea that I was my I was my own coach, I was my own nutritionist, I was my own trainer, I was my own everything, and it was just kind of like mine. It was my little secret. And I didn't boast. I didn't go around and, of course we didn't have Instagram back then, so you couldn't boast too much.
Yeah, it's a whole lot easier to do now, right?
But then when I started seeing results and you started seeing all these things happen to your body and changes, then those 30 and 40-year-olds that I looked up to in the gym, wow, you're doing it, man. You're doing a good job. That was all I needed, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I competed in bodybuilding later on to be competitive, not to show off or get a sponsorship or anything and make a career. I just said, I want to compete and be competitive and see what my design looks like versus somebody else's design, and go from there.
Yes, absolutely.
I know, a little altruistic, but
Well, I mean, yeah, I think the key thing is essentially you're competing against yourself, and you display that in competition with others. But essentially, the key thing is how much improvement have you made? Because you can't control what shows up on the day in a bodybuilding show, right? So that's really true, and actually is a valuable lesson. If I could have done that from day one, I'd have had better results, because I know that a lot of my concern when I was in the gym starting out was, what are they doing? What are they thinking about me? In reality, they're not thinking about me, but I didn't know that. And if I could just stayed in my lane and just been like, right, well, I used this much last time, I'm just going to try and get a little extra rep here or a tiny bit of weight. That would have done. You served me so much better. So it's a key thing to learn. Earlier on, you kind of gave a really nice overview of training for hypertrophy. Just from a nutrition standpoint, can you walk someone who's a relative beginner through some sort of big rocks, really important factors that they need to have in place, the stuff that matters, not the pre-workout or the nutrient timing that maybe isn't so significant?
Yeah, it's a part of the whole kind of pyramid that I tell my students. I draw a pyramid, and number one, the big base layer of the pyramid is sleep. And if you're not sleeping well, you're not recovering, there's a whole avalanche of things that could happen, that could go wrong or right, if you get no sleep or enough sleep. So the second tier is nutrition. And so we're not even talking about training yet. We're not even talking about supplements. Nutrition's got to be on point. Sleep well to recover, nutrition to recover, and to progress. Third one, training, and then the last one, supplements. And I say the peak is the smallest part of the pyramid is supplements, and I put in parentheses optional. Mm-hmm. So I focus on nutrition. I've always focused on nutrition. Of course I've taken supplements, but I can count on one hand the supplements I've tried. But nothing is more anabolic or than food. Mm-hmm. Nothing is gonna create more progress than a sound diet. And I see a lot of kids that get a ton of supplements, and they say, this is it. Next 3 months I'm gonna hit it hard. So they get a ton of supplements and they start making progress. 3 months later, they gain muscle and all these things, and they say, well, the supplements did it, right? Mm-hmm. No. When you got your supplements, your mentality changed. Now you're going to the gym more. Now you're eating better. You're eating enough. Your habits changed. It wasn't the supplements was like this placebo effect.
Yes.
That happened. It's an expensive placebo effect.
Yeah, you're so right with that. I mean, it almost the supplement. I've seen people buy supplements, and it's almost like an accountability thing, because they've invested in the supplements. Now mm-hmm. they better do the actual stuff that works.
Yeah, they better eat right. They better train every day and progress and work out hard and all these other things. And then they do. But then their brain says, "Oh, the supplements did that for me."
Yeah.
It's like, well, but supplement, and I've written, a lot of my articles were for, companies that sold supplements. They're supplement warehouses and things, distributors. So I don't want to be a hypocrite or anything, but do some do work, but I can count on one hand how many work and how many don't. And I've been, to all the expos and the Arnold's Classic and Olympias and different things, and the supplement companies that were around 5 years ago, they're no longer around. Mm-hmm. And then the ones that are around today, they won't be around 5 years from now. Same with the types of supplements. The thing about it is, if you want to drill down to details, it's like creatine works. It's the most clinically researched supplement on the planet. It works. So what happened was these supplement companies are trying to find the next creatine. So they're just throwing anything that sticks. And it's not happening. It's just they don't. I mean, glutamine and all these things. You can see the research. That's what I tell people. Students come up, you tried this, or you tried this is for this, and this is for that. Show me the research. Show me the research. I'll believe you if you show me the research. But they can't. Mm-hmm. And but as far as nutrition goes, I mean, again, boring answer. There's a lot of diets out there. Oh my God, there's a lot of diets out there. Keto is huge. I think worldwide, probably.
Yes. Yeah.
And keto is just repackaged. It was around in the 80s, and it was around the 70s and the 60s, and they kind of relabel it a little bit and sell some books and stuff and diet plans. And but I'm a huge believer. The boring answer. I'm a huge believer in moderation's key. I mean, I'm a little bit more. I don't want to say carb sensitive. I can tolerate carbs pretty well. I ate carbs all the way up to shows. I never was zero carb going into shows because I was skinny. My body eats carbs really well.
Yeah.
So if carbs were complex in nature, enough fiber, if my fat was low, my dietary fat was low, protein high, of course, I was golden. Yeah. I was good. I'd lean out. I had friends, opposite. They had high fat, high protein, low carb. So when it comes to extremes like that, yeah, there can be some differences, but you can't, for example, keto diets, they're void of carbohydrate. Well, carbohydrates have a ton of, they include fiber, they include a lot of phytochemicals, they include a lot of compounds that fight cancer and heart disease and make us healthier, and especially hair, nails, skin, eyesight. They include so many trace minerals, macro minerals, all these things. So why would you want to avoid when you're breaking muscle down to build it and torturing yourself in the gym? Why would you want to starve your body right after? It doesn't make any sense to me. So.
No. Well, the other thing is, I mean, a lot of the diet industry is literally that. It's a fat loss industry, and they're coming up with ways to package up a calorie deficit in different structures. And then the problem is that, I work with a lot of guys who are naturally skinny, and then they see this diet industry and that's what's everywhere, and then they try and extrapolate that and take it to use themselves when their goal is complete 100% opposite. They're trying to gain weight, and they're following a plan that is deliberately structured in a manner to try and manage your weight and keep it low. And keto being a really popular example at the moment. That and intermittent fasting are two that I get loads of questions about. And it's like, well, your goal is to have a calorie surplus and carbohydrates, primary energy source for high intensity activity like lifting weights, which is what you're going to do, which is going to provide the stimulus to grow. So do you think keto is a good idea? And most of them are like, no, not really. Okay, brilliant. Well, so maybe don't do it. But they're like, oh, but so and so said.
Oh yeah. I saw on the internet that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if it's on the internet, it must be true.
Yeah, what you said too is something I do with a lot of people. I do 20 questions with them, and when it comes to training or diet or anything, I say, you know what to do. You know what to do. I can ask you about 20 questions about nutrition and diet, and you're going to answer them, probably most of them correctly, and you'll have a plan. Out of those 20 questions, you'll have a plan. Like you just said, you think keto is good when you need a surplus of calories, a lot of energy, gain muscular weight. But your client, no, I don't think keto is a good idea. They answer their own question. So it's people know what to do, but again, that sounds like a broken record, but it's the latest greatest thing. It has to, for something to work today, it has to be colorful, loud, unique. I've never seen this before or heard of it, so it has to work. That's the attitude today. The old boring stuff is just I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear balanced diet full of complex carbs and fiber and lean proteins and healthy fats. I don't want to hear that. That's hard.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds like effort. Yeah, so it's essentially it's like do the basics exceptionally well, and then you'll get there in the end.
But most important, of course, you want that foundation built. But man, it's just like training. Stay consistent. You can't have 2 days of good eating in the week.
Yeah.
You can't have 2 days of good training in the week. You got to have at least 6 days of good training and 6 days of good eating in your weeks in order to progress up or down. Any more than that, I mean, 7 days is even better, but you got to give yourself a break. But yeah, it's just I think consistency is just as important. You get on that momentum, and it's like a compounding momentum that moves forward. And I always tell people too is when I was training, I would actually gain a little bit of weight into a show, and it's impossible. You can't do that. And I was like, no, the leaner you get, I found this with myself, the leaner I got, the easier it was to gain muscle, because the calories were they were just going to the muscle, to put it kind of in a simple way of explanation. The calories didn't have to maintain a fat stores and all these other different things. It was just going straight to muscle. So the muscle was soaking it up, and I actually would gain a few pounds going into a show. But it's hard to tell any of that to anybody these days. I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy or anything. But it's just as a coach, as a trainer, as whatever, it is really tough to tell somebody, hey, look, they'll come up to you and say, my weight hasn't changed on a scale. I haven't lost any weight. I'm working with you for 3 months and the weight hasn't changed. It's like you're recompositioning your body. You're gaining muscle and some strength. You're losing body fat. All these things are shifting and changing. But it's really tough. That's why trainers and coaches have to be counselors too. I think we have to be maybe minor in psychology or something.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think that's definitely the case. And people they have blind spots and they ignore the obvious. Again, like that example, you've got someone who's trying to lose weight and they're recomping. You'll say, oh, the scale hasn't moved. Okay, how are your clothes fitting? Oh, I'm down 2 dress sizes, or my belt's fitting. I've had to add a new notch to my belt because it's come down so much. You're like, yeah, exactly. So because the scales haven't moved.
And every family and friend is complimenting.
Yeah.
Hey, this is that. It's like, but you won't trust your trainer.
Yeah. So 100%, completely agree with that. And again, that consistency point is massively important. You're not going to train hard 2 days a week and then suddenly get huge. It's going to take some consistent hard work. And the sad fact is, as a sales pitch, it's a pretty poor one. No one's looking for that as their as the sales. So that's probably all we can do is let people know the realities of it, and then in time let them maybe make some mistakes, and they'll finally gravitate towards the basics that do the job. I don't want to take up too much of your time today, so I think we'll sort of get around to wrapping things up. I've got a quick fire, a few questions for you, and then we'll sort of move on. So first up is an either or set of choices for you. So pizza or burger?
Ooh, oh my God. Oh, burger.
Okay. Chocolate or peanut butter?
Peanut butter.
Beach holiday or a city break?
Oh, beach holiday.
If you're having a steak, is it rare or well done?
Rare.
Yeah. And then eggs, scrambled or poached?
Oh, scrambled.
Okay. And then, say again?
Those were easy.
Yeah. Well, I try not to make them too difficult for people. Maybe I'll have to spice those up a little bit, make them a bit more challenging. I'm still waiting for someone to tell me that they'd have their steak well done. No one's ever said it yet, though. So sooner or later, someone can do it, and then I can dive down their neck on that. But okay, and now can you tell me something about yourself that people probably don't know?
Oh wow. I'm a little bit of a not knowledgeable. I don't claim any kind of intelligence in this area. I'm just a fan of astrophysics.
Okay. Yeah.
It's bigger than me, and I'm very uninformed about it. So I kind of, when you get neck deep in fitness and training and stuff, you kind of want a different, on the other side of the spectrum of things. You just kind of want a break from that. So I think it's kind of out there, but
yeah. It's certainly different, and I'm so out of my depth that I can't even think of a follow-up question on it. I mean, so now if I have access to everyone in the world, like an address book with everyone in there, who should I interview next?
Alive?
Yeah, we'll go with alive. So there's the faint chance that I might even be able to achieve it. But
that is a tough question.
Would it be easier if it was not alive?
I don't know, because my mind kind of, with the context of this, of what we're doing, it naturally gravitates towards the world of fitness. So, I'm going to say one that's kind of controversial. I'll say Greg Glassman.
Okay.
Because I think people either love or hate him, and I think he'd be good to ask some really off the wall questions too.
Yeah, you'd stir things up a little bit for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. All right, well, we just want to take an opportunity now to say thank you for being on the show, and if people want to know more about you, find out a little bit more about what you do and the service you provide, where can they find out more about Brad Borland?
Oh, just my website, bradborland.com. Try not to look for me on social. It's pretty much a barren wasteland, so much.
Thanks for taking the time to interview. It was brilliant.
Had fun. Thanks, Tom.
All right, man. That was great. Thanks very much.
That wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for investing your time with us. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed what you heard and took value from it, please do me a favour by heading to iTunes right now, subscribing to the show, and leaving a review. Positive reviews, like 5 stars, hint, hint, really help the ranking of the show and will help us to spread the word and keep getting top-class guests on. Make sure to follow Breaking Muscle on social media and me at Tom McCormick, that's TOMMACCORMICK on Instagram. Bye for now, and I'm looking forward to catching you on the next episode of the Breaking Muscle podcast.